here this afternoon. Thanks for coming to the session. I'm Andrea Vernon. I'm going to do a brief introduction of the speakers for this afternoon. I'll start with Mike Brown. Mike is a partnership specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau that's based in Great Falls. Mike is a graduate of the University of Great Falls and a veteran of the U.S. Air Force as well. While attending the University of Great Falls, Mike volunteered for U.S. Senator Conrad Burns' re-election campaign. And after a successful re-election, Mike began working for Senator Burns in his Great Falls office. And he later became Senator Burns' deputy state director. Also, we have Bridget Rongich here from the nonprofit Voter Engagement Network. She's the national director for the organization, and she's been working in community organizing and public policy for over 10 years now, with much of her work focused specifically on civic engagement. Prior to joining the nonprofit Voter Engagement Network, Bridget coordinated the organization's Minnesota affiliate and the Minnesota Participation Project, which was also based at the Minnesota Council for Nonprofits. Before joining the Minnesota Council for Nonprofits, she served as the public policy and program manager of the Rainbow Families, which is a regional organization that's dedicated to advocating for equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender families and their children. Bridget also continues to work as a visual arts curator for Intermedia Arts, which is a nonprofit arts organization that's working to build understanding among people through arts. So please join me in welcoming our presenters for this afternoon.
Thank you all so much. And one of the things in my really long standard bio that they got that is not in there is that I am a graduate of the University of Montana, and it's so wonderful to be back here. I can't even tell you guys. I got in last night and I'm just super excited. I live in Minneapolis right now. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about how nonprofits can be involved in the census, the critical role that you all have to play, and how to do it. And we have this awesome partnership specialist. You guys are very lucky to have Mike Brown here. We are doing this work across the country, and sort of hit or miss how many people are available and ready to work with nonprofits, and he certainly is. But before we get started, could we do a quick round of your name, organization, where you're from, just so we know who's in the room today? Maybe starting over right here.
Brody Baum, CEO, Mission on Enterprises from Lake County.
Okay. I'm Andrea Vernon with the Office for Civic Engagement here at the University.
Jen Kazanson, Rural Employment Opportunities, Helena. Lisa Crowley with the Upgrades Foundation in Helena.
Bill Pratt Associates, and Big Sky Institute for the Advancement of Nonprofits, Helena.
Sue Talbot, Western Montana Community Foundation, Missoula.
This is Anita Hurst, Show Activities. I'm a board member from Show, Montana.
Lee Galton with the Montana Conservation Corps out of Bozeman.
Shannon Stover, I'm also with the Montana Conservation Corps out of Bozeman.
Sarah Sadowski, Young Adult Service Corps, Helena.
Louise Bruce with the University of Montana Western Outreach Department.
Rod Speed, Tumbleweed Executive Director in Billing.
Dan Veal, AmeriCorps Vista with Montana Credit Unions for Community Development, Helena.
I'm Sarah Hinkle. I'm a student in the American Humanics Student Association and working on my nonprofit administration minor.
I'm Christine DeSenza with Montana Public Radio, also a AmeriCorps Vista.
I'm Zoe Zulakis. I'm a Vista at the Montana Justice Foundation.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, welcome and thanks for being here. I just want to quickly say my organization, the Nonprofit Voter Engagement Network, our mission is to increase the work that nonprofits are doing around voter and civic engagement by helping nonprofits to build that capacity. Whatever your mission might be, you are the most trusted resources in your communities oftentimes and can really help particularly underrepresented communities become more involved. We are partnering with MNA around the census as we did in the 2008 elections, and they will be able to provide you with Montana-specific training, e-newsletter articles, hopefully some t-shirts and buttons and posters for your offices, so those kinds of things. So briefly, the agenda today. We're going to talk about the 2010 census, what's at stake in Montana, why nonprofits, what is your particular role in this, 8 simple things that you can do, and then how we can help you do this work. And we hope that you'll ask questions throughout this process. So we want to keep it interesting and low-key, casual. So we're going to cover why is an accurate census important, who's at risk of being missed. Mike's going to cover some of the milestones so that you all have an idea of how this is going to go over the coming months, and then some of the challenges at stake. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Mike.
Thanks, Bridget. Probably everybody knows that the U.S. Census is taken every 10 years. It started in 1790, and it's of every living person in the United States. It's regardless of your citizenship, legal status, or age. The data is used for allocating funds, apportionment of representatives. In Montana's case, we've got 1 representative. We could, if we haven't get more people, get 2. But it's also used for redistricting in the local state senate and state house seats, and plus county commissioner seats by drawing the district lines, and it determines policy and priorities. Of the $440 billion that's annually given in funds, every person in Montana that fills out their 2010 census form, it's like writing a check to the government for $400 every year. So that's the reason why it's very important. And then the funds are used for several different items, too numerous to list. So $400 a year per person times 10 years, $4,000 per person over 10 years that the state gets for that 10 minutes it's going to take for you to fill out your census form.
And often directly, the federal funding that's going into your communities are so often going into communities that nonprofits are serving. So it's really important for us as nonprofits to have a stake in this. Mike, you touched a little bit on this, but...
Yeah, $1.6 billion annually through census data, through formula grants. And this is
the old gerrymander slide. But Mike's going to just talk a little bit, you already mentioned it, but just the political apportionment that census data is used for.
Being involved in politics in the past, it's, and everybody here I hope is registered to vote, that it's important that you get so many people represented by each representative in the state. For example, they will be so many people per each House district in the state, and then 2 House districts will make a Senate district. And they'll be redrawing these lines based on this data. So that's one other reason that it's very important that the census data is correct and that everybody gets counted.
Yep. And how many of you have worked on the census in any way before?
Filling out the form.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so it's because it happens every 10 years, it's almost like a totally clean slate. Usually nonprofits maybe haven't had this experience before. I just want to ask, what do you think, based on your experience in your communities, what might make your community members more difficult to count? What are some attributes?
Distrust. Yeah, just general anti-government sentiments.
Okay, I'm gonna throw these up here as we're talking because we'll use them later.
And moving around, I mean, people don't stay put.
Right.
People are more transient these days.
And I have to say, I lived in Missoula during the last census, and when someone came to my door, I was very perplexed. And you would think, you know, when they talk about hard to count communities, I didn't necessarily fit that profile, besides being a college student, I guess. But I was thinking, you know, who is this person? What kind of information do they want from me? I was not prepared. I hadn't really been hearing about this other places in my community. So we're hoping nonprofits, by the time the census comes, people will say, oh, right, this is what my service provider was talking to me about, or my church, or my community center. So what else might make your communities difficult to count?
Rural and spread out.
Keep talking, I'll keep writing.
Any others?
People with disabilities, Indians.
So let's see. Communities. Yep. And Mike, do you want to, it seems like there's not a huge non-English speaking population here, but the census form will be translated into multiple languages. However, generally people have to request that, so that's a little bit of a barrier. Do you want to say anything about that briefly?
Sure. If somebody has a disability, we can help them with that. Native American, I don't know whether we'll touch on this a little bit later, but in the past it's been very hard to count on the reservations. Well, this time around the Census Bureau has pumped more money into the operation than ever before. So in 2000, there wasn't a partnership specialist like me living in Montana. They were living in another state and they come to Montana, you know, especially July, August to see Glacier Park or something like that. And then, but now we have a partnership specialist, government me, and we have a partnership specialist, tribal, that her name is Jonelle Barkus. I'll tell her to watch the video.
She has friends in Montana.
She is traveling to the reservations in Montana and Wyoming, and besides us two, I have 3 partnership assistants that have been hired to work 32 hours each a week that travel. I'm in Great Falls, so it's a long ways to Sidney, Montana. It's a long ways to you know, Miles City. So, and it's a long ways to Libby. So we hired 3 people in that area. Now, Jonelle has several tribal partnership assistants living on the reservations that work anywhere from 8 hours to 32 hours a week. And then what's going to happen is there will be people go door to door on the reservations to take the count. They won't get it in the mail. There'll be somebody, a trusted voice in their community that will come. So I'm expecting the 2010 census to be the most accurate it's ever been for Montana because of the money that that is being pumped into it and people on the ground.
Fantastic.
And the rural spread out, we've noticed, you might have seen in the paper, hopefully you've heard it on the news or something about the address canvassers going out. Now that part of the operation is done, but they went out with handheld GPS units. They walked up to the front door of a house and they took a reading. Even in rural areas, we had people getting lost, you know, driving down roads. They would find it. Then we had quality control inspectors come in a couple weeks after that to verify that they'd got good, accurate counts. So I'm thinking that the rural areas that are spread out, you know, we found them. They will, if they get their mail at their home, they will be mailed a form. If not, somebody will deliver one to them. It's kind of like a classic, anybody that uses FedEx. FedEx doesn't deliver to P.O. boxes, rural route boxes. That's the way the census forms are going to be delivered. They will be delivered to your home or somebody will hand deliver them to your. Plus we're going to have, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, questionnaire assistance centers and be counted sites throughout the state that will allow people, if they don't get a form, to go get one. And that's what we need help, making sure everybody knows you have to be counted. It's very important.
Mm-hmm. So, and we're going to get into timeline nitty-gritty in a little bit where Mike will fill you in on the form, when it gets mailed out, when people are going to be canvassing, things like that. Just to make sure anything we haven't covered, these are some of the key areas that the census has identified that can make a community difficult to count. Low-income populations, renters. One of the things we're going to get into is with the foreclosure crisis, there are often multiple families living in a low-income housing unit and that would be at risk of being evicted if their landlord found out how many people were actually living there. However, the census data is completely private, is not shared with any other area of the government. And everyone is forced to take an oath who's involved with the census. It's very serious penalties. And basically, we're hoping that nonprofits can convey that message to their communities in a much better way than, you know, Mike or I could. by knocking on someone's door and saying, hey, it's totally safe, don't worry. You know, well, when your family's being evicted is at stake, you want to make sure that's true. So that's why some of these communities are hard to count. And often communities that need the most infrastructure and funding being sent to their communities. So people with limited English proficiency, you guys already named that. Adults without a high school diploma. Young children, for some reason, are the most difficult to count demographic. And then unemployed folks.
On the young children, we've got a program called Census in Schools that's starting up. And every school in the United States the principal of that school will receive information from the Census Bureau it'll be some lesson plans, some instructional material that they can use, and then they plan on early next year having a census week where hopefully the teachers will teach. As the father of 2 children, I know the Wednesday envelopes that come home that has packed full of stuff, you know, the skating party, baseball tryouts, soccer tryouts, and you sit there for 2 hours and you read it, and then you get to see your children's grades. So there'll probably be some stuff in that, but every school should get something in the next month or so to help them, you know, kick off Census in Schools. There's coloring books for the little kids and crayons that say Census 2010 on them. There's and Scholastic, if any of you involved in education knows Scholastic does a lot of educational stuff. They're involved with the Census Bureau.
And Mike, would you like to say anything specifically about who was missed in Montana in 2000 or any of the funding associated with that? Sure.
The state of Montana met with them in early February, late February, and they decided that they would start a statewide complete count committee. You may have seen something in the newspaper about it. They've come up with the ideas of people that were missed. They say that in the 2000 census there were about 14,400 Montanans that weren't counted. That's an estimate. So if you figure up the formula of $400 a year, it ends up being about 43 million that the state of Montana missed out on in the last 10 years for those 14,400 people not being counted. The state of Montana also has a website, and I'll give it to you here. It's devoted completely to the Census 2010. It's CEIC, it's Census and Economic Information Center. Then it's .mt.gov, Gov/2010. And they had their kickoff dinner last week, had about 100 people from across the state that attended, and we're hoping that the more information is put out there and the more people are talking about the census as it comes forward, we'll find those 14,400 people. The mail response rate that people in 2000 were sent in Montana was 68%. Now that doesn't mean that only 68% of the people were counted. That meant that people that actually were mailed a census form, only 68% of them returned it. So that's not bad.
That's pretty good.
I think the top state was Iowa or Nebraska had 74%. So whenever I was hired for this job, I said I would treat it like a political campaign, you know, and any candidate would love to get 68% of the vote, let me tell you. So I'm thinking we're going to get close to 80 this time or better. People are more involved than ever before. Across the nation, and this is one of these staggering figures that only the federal government can come up with, for every 1% of the United States population that does not mail back their form, it costs the federal government $80 to $90 million to hire people, to go out, to knock on doors. So it can save money by returning the form. But Montana, 68% is not bad. Some counties were as high as, in Montana, as 70-some percent. Other ones were as low as 45%. And whenever I first started, the counties that I visited were the ones that were at the bottom. And I would go in and smile and give them free stuff and a folder and tell them how important the census was. Most people realize that the census is very important, but it's just getting the word out So far I've been to like 40 counties and traveled, I don't know, 15,000 miles and flew 10 or 12,000 miles. And then my 3 partnership assistants have been traveling, and they've been racking up miles too, visiting people. So it's very important that we get the word out. No, 68% is not bad, but we can really do better this time.
And I think, we can think of it as a competition because there's a finite amount of resources at the federal level that are going to be dispersed. And also, within our own communities, this will determine where a new school might be built, where a hospital is going to be, where a community center is, where, programs for women and children and seniors are going to be. And so certainly this is, are we going to step up for our communities? And apparently that's a message that resonates with folks. It's not them being counted for the sake of themselves, but this is an act on behalf of their communities. Any questions so far? Okay, take it away.
Missoula versus Great Falls versus Butte versus Billings, trying to get those mayors, we got some elections going on, so after the elections I want to, visit with the mayors and say, let's do a little competition here, see what percentage of people we can, some of the operational thing, I think there may be some of that information in your folder, but we talked about the address canvassing, the group quarters, that's kind of one of those funny words that they use, but basically that's prisons, nursing homes, college dormitories, places like that. We need to know where those are at so we can make sure they get counted. Fall of 2009, which anybody who drove over Rogers Pass today, it felt like fall, about 38 degrees. Open remaining local census offices. There's an office already open in Billings, and now in October, an office will open in Great Falls and an office will open in Missoula. And then in December, we will have our Spirit of Community celebration where we invite everybody to come to the offices and have some politicians and local people give speeches and tell us how important the census is. Recruiting census takers, that's going to start. Inside the folder, there's a website and a phone number. If anybody wants one of those jobs, we're going to start recruiting for the big push at the beginning of the year, probably about last part of October, first part of November. The jobs, they 40 hours a week, up to 40 hours a week. Some people can work part-time. Some of the jobs in the past have been anywhere from $9 to $13 an hour, plus mileage. They're not going to hire you if you live in Libby to drive to Havre to do it. They will try to hire people in the local area. There will be a test you take. There will be a background check. This is my 3rd federal job, so I was fingerprinted for the 3rd time. Background check done, took an oath. Same oath I took when I went in the military. So it's important that we get a lot of people, and we get people who know their neighborhoods and are a trusted voice, and that somebody knows is great, and that helps us a lot. The January paid media, it's going to be like $300 million of paid media. They figured out that by paying, instead of having a local public service announcement that if you're like me and you can't sleep most nights, you're up watching TV, you see these commercials at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they decided we don't want our census commercials always running at 2, 3 a.m. So why don't we pay for a little media? So last time in 2000, I believe they paid for it, and the response rate went up.
Crazy.
So it's like, yes, it works. So this time around, they says, we're going to sock a lot more money into this. So they have a great paid media campaign that you'll start seeing at the first of the year. You'll probably see something on the Super Bowl, maybe. I don't know whether they're going to buy a spot on the Super Bowl. But it is going to be big, and you're going to see things in the paper. I've partnered with the Billings Gazette and the Great Falls Tribune, and they're going to help us out with some banner ads and things like that. So, it's going to be big for that. March.
I was just going to say, it's going to be a little bit like nonprofits who worked on the 2008 election. a lot of people found that, whoa, everybody's registered, everybody's excited about the election, but they're coming to their nonprofits to say, okay, what do I need to bring? Where do I go? You know, who's all on the ballot? We're hoping that because of this big media campaign, people are going to know about the census, people are going to be excited about the census, but are going to be going to their trusted community institutions to say, okay, how do I fill out this form? When does it come to me? You know, how do I count my college student child? What if there's more people than should be living in my home? All those sorts of things. So you're a nice complement to this paid media campaign. No one can substitute for the community organizations.
In March, you'll start seeing, people will probably get a postcard that'll say, you know, hey, the census form is coming, the census form is coming. Then a little bit after that, the census form will come. And I just, not too many people understand this, but as soon as you get your census form, if you know that you're going to be living where you're at on April 1st, 2010, go ahead and fill it out and send it back in. You can do that. Instead of, like me, I've got a desk that everything goes on, and then it goes on and goes on and goes, and then it's like, you know, a month later. So if you know, as soon as you get the form, if you know where that's where you're going to be at, then fill it out. And one other thing that's going to be really neat, which makes this more like a political campaign than ever before, is real-time results will be on a website. Cool. So in like in the presidential election, you know, you're up, you're going, well, how did Obama do in Florida? Did he do it? You know, and how's McCain doing here or there? You can say, how did Missoula County do in the census? You know, did we do a good job? Did we get 70%? You know, or are we beating Great Falls? You know, are we beating Bozeman? You know, those people down in Bozeman, the Bobcat people. You know, so you know, or the Bobcat people beating the Grizz. You know. So there's going to be real-time results where we can look and see how the states are doing, and how, I think it's going to be by cities and zip codes even. So it'll be like a campaign for 3 or 4 weeks, which will be, for us political people, this is like the greatest thing ever, you know. 3 or 4 weeks of results coming in, you know. You can hit refresh on your computer all the time. So.
You can't fill it out online. It's going to be a paper ballot.
No, they thought about, they did some testing, and they're still feel that online filling it out is not exactly the most secure means. Mm-hmm. There's an example in your folder there of what the form is going to be like. And it's 10 questions, as that flyer says, it's 10 questions, 10 minutes. So about 10, maybe 10 minutes if you got more than one person living.
But no, there were 2 pieces last time. There was the easy one and the follow-up.
I'm glad you asked that question. In the 2000 census, every 6th form was an American Community Survey. Well, that confused everybody and upset people who got it, because every 6th, and I was working for Senator Burns at that time, and I think every 6th person in Montana that received that form called his office. So what they did, they decided that to do the American Community Survey separately. So every month, 250,000 American Community Survey forms are sent out to random households across the United States. And then every 10 years, the simple little census form will be sent out. The census form will be a snapshot. The American Community Survey is more of a rolling poll type thing, where we will be able to see trends more quickly. Larger communities, I think 60, 70, or 80,000 above, their data will be updated every 2 to 3 years on the website, on American Fact Finder website, which you've got a flyer in there for that. And then the smaller communities will be about every 5 years with the data they get from the American Community Survey. So that's a good question. And now some people could in March or April be one of the 250,000 people that gets both forms.
But the nice thing is that everyone is going to get this simple 10-question form, so our message can be a little bit more uniform.
Then if you don't return the form, it's like, There'll be somebody that'll have a badge, that'll have a census badge on, they'll come to your door. They'll probably call and ask you to return it, and then give you a little bit if they can't, and then they will come to your house, knock on and the people that they hire will not be working 8 to 5. They'll come, from 4 to 9. They'll come on Sunday mornings or Saturday morning until they will try, I've heard, up to like 6 times. And then they'll go to your neighbors, and your neighbor knows everything about you.
More than you need.
So they will go out, they will basically ask your neighbor, how many adults, how many children live in that house, and the neighbor will say, tell them, and then that'll be it. And you'll think that, you didn't give your data, but it was gotten through your neighbors. So, but that's as a last resort. So, but that's, and then it kind of I'll be looking for a job about that time. And then it'll all go to the president by December, I think, 31st. And then it's released to the states early 2011. And then the states will start their redistricting. I believe 2012 is when they will do the redistricting.
Yep. Great. So I'm going to just speak really briefly nationally. We've already covered some of this, but just some interesting facts about why this census is going to be, what the challenges are with this census opposed to others. We have increasing diversity in our populations, growth in immigrant populations that may be a little bit leery of participation, especially since there have been a number of raids on immigrant areas in the last 5 years or so that have made people more reluctant to give their information to the government. And as Mike said, every single person is counted. Whether you're a citizen, whether you're here legally or not, you should be counted. And I don't know if anyone has heard about these calls for a census boycott. We try not to bring it up too much, but it seems to be getting a little bit of traction. There's a group of Latino pastors that have called for a census boycott in their communities as a way to push for immigration reform. But our leading partners in the Latino community, particularly if any of you work with Latinos, the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, NALEO, their website is naleo.org. They do incredible work around this and are providing all the Spanish language materials around this, and are definitely saying that boycotting the census will not lead to immigration reform. So we're looking to them to try to counteract those myths. Post 9/11, people have been a little bit concerned about whether or not the Patriot Act overrules the data privacy laws, things like that. Internet age, just concerns about data confidentiality. We are hoping that the Obama administration will come out very clearly and say both that the Patriot Act does not trump our laws around data privacy in the census, and also, this is speaking from my organization, not from the census, we are hoping that they will say they will stop raiding immigrant communities during the census so that immigrant-serving nonprofits can say, yes, it's safe to open your door. Do you have any thoughts on that or knowledge about if that's going to happen?
There was a Congresswoman from some state, I won't name the state, but she said, we shouldn't fill out the census form.
She's from my state.
I wasn't going to say that. But then she asked, then she said something like, I don't know where they get these questions from anyway, and the answer is that the Congress approves the questions for the census. They were approved several years ago for the 2010 census. Title 13 U.S. Code requires you to fill out the form. The immigrants, people, I've spoken to various groups across the state. People say, well, why are you counting illegals? We count people. We don't know whether they're illegal. Yeah. If you have 3,000 people in your community and 1,000 of them are illegal, they're still using the services. They're still using buses, maybe health centers, schools. So you need to know that you have 3,000 people, not 2,000, So and people kind of understand that, you know, that's not our job to find illegal people. It's our job to count the number of people living in the United States on a certain date.
Right. And it's that, as you'll see on the form, that question is nowhere on the form. So no one's going to ask about anyone's immigration status or anything like that. However, you know, I'll just say with the raids, or nonprofits who serve immigrants have said, don't answer your door and you can't get deported. So what we're hoping that we can say, and the Bush administration suspended the raids in 2000, we're hoping that'll happen again so that nonprofits can say to their community members, yes, it's completely safe, there's no worries during this allotted period of time. Okay? Go ahead.
We work with migrant workers, and I was wondering if you had a plan to do outreach to them. Not to get you off topic, but
No, that's totally on topic. So
We need to know the information, like where they're working at. The bottom line on on getting counted is where you live and sleep at most of the time. We'll be out looking for places like for migrant workers. There'll also be places where we look for homeless people, and where we will count those on there'll be a certain time frame. There'll also be counted sites that migrant workers could fill out, you know, go get a form and be counted. Hopefully the people that they're working for will be provided with some information from the Census Bureau to pass on to their people that are working to make sure they get counted. It's a lot bigger thing than most people realize, counting everybody on one day, and you know, all across the United States. You know, we have answers to just about every scenario of, you know, college, if they're in college, if they're in the military, if they're snowbirds, you know, things like that. So we've got answers to most of them.
And definitely, just to echo it, what the line that we're hearing is that people should be counted wherever they consider to be their primary place of residence. So, you know, with college kids, you got to figure out, are you going to be counted at your parents' house, or are you going to be counted where you live for college? And generally we say, you know, if you're going to school here, living in the dorms, that's your primary residence. And if you're there on April 1st, that's where you're counted. Migrant workers, it's a little bit tricky, but basically what we say is, where are you on April 1st? Unless there is somewhere that you are more often than not. So, and then like Mike said, there will be one day where the homeless population is counted. Ahead of time, the census will go out, identify places where homeless people tend to sleep or congregate, and then there will be one day when all those folks are counted in shelters as well.
The college dormitory would be like information given to the colleges, and also like the student advisor or the person responsible for that dormitory will. Some colleges, you don't get your mail at your room, so they'll make sure that they you know, are briefed. When a local census office opens in Missoula and Great Falls, there'll be people working out there that'll go brief the colleges on how we're going to count them. But the basic rule is, if they're living and sleeping at the college dormitory on April 1st, 2010, that's where they'll be counted, because they're using services in that community.
Let's imagine that we too have sent ours in for the April 1st date, and April 8th comes and Bill hasn't sent his in. Do you have sort of access to the fact that he's missing and he'll get a call at his house?
Yeah, there'll be, I think there's a code on there that'll scan it in whenever it's received and that's how we'll get the real live updates. It'll be scanned in, computerized. And then we can, you know, it'll be a little while after April 1st before we start, knocking on doors. But, you know, but it'll take a little while to get figured out who hasn't returned their forms. But I would say by the end of April we should know, and that's the reason why you should return them as quickly as possible. Yes.
as far as university students go, how do your parents account for you as well, or no? So what's the age?
There is no age. It's counted where you consider your primary residence. So every person should only be counted once.
So like if there's a family, a household of 4, there will be 4 different forms?
Nope, they'll fill out, I think you can fill out up to, is it 6 people on one form?
6 or 7.
Yep, on one form, and
that
you'll get an
form.
additional form if there's more people living in that home. So it's not 1 per person, it's generally considered 1 per household.
So how do you prevent double, like, my parents live in Kalispell and I live here. So will they fill it out for me saying that I'm in Missoula and then I'll fill it out for myself?
Nope, you'll fill it out here. Yep.
And will they'll be told to not fill it out for myself?
This is part of the education campaign.
If they answer the question, who was living at your house on April 1st, 2010?
Okay.
Plus, they're going to put down names and ages.
Okay.
Like you'll put down your name. Well, if they put down 2 Jane Does, 21 years old, birth date, this date, then the computer's going to check that, okay,
And hopefully through the education campaigns going out, people will as things ramp up towards April 1st, people will be hearing that kind of information. So if your kid is in college, they will be counted there, those kind of things.
On the census website, there's frequently asked questions that has just about anything anybody's ever asked on there that's got an answer to it. And then you can subscribe to their email and they will update you if there's a change or an update to the question or the update to the answer.
Go ahead.
Why is there question 8 and 9?
8 and 9? That's so heritage.
Yeah, but number 8, no, okay. But then it's yes, and it goes through a selection, and then yes, if it's another Hispanic or Latino or Spanish origin. Why?
Well, I think there's different groups, if I'm reading you correctly.
Yeah, and I understand that.
He wants to know, why does anybody care?
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
The Latino community cares itself. They don't tend to like to be known as one.
It's to keep track of how many, your origins of the certain race.
Are you asking why does anyone care in general about the race question on here?
No.
Okay.
No, I understand that, but it seems that one is so specific. And then number 9, you have American Indian or Alaskan Native. And there's a separate one for Native Hawaiian.
We can go on and I can answer that as soon as I find that.
Okay. And I know that while he's looking that up, there is some confusion because a lot of communities don't feel like they fall under any of these categories. In Minnesota, we have a large Somali immigrant population. Well, they don't identify as Black or African American, so we tell folks they can write in what they feel like their ethnicity or heritage is. And some people decline to answer that question, but a lot of communities want to know because it increases their political clout, their access to, these are the different kinds of languages that we'll provide our services in, those sorts of things.
Number is a person of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. Hispanic origin is used in numerous programs and is vital in making policy decisions. These data are needed to determine compliance with provisions of anti-discrimination and employment and minority recruitment legislation. Under the Voting Rights Act, data about Hispanic origin are essential to ensure enforcement of bilingual education rules. And then number 6, what is a person's race? Race is key to implementing any number of federal laws and a critical factor in the basic research behind numerous policies. Race data are required by federal programs promoting equal employment opportunity are needed to assess racial disparities in health and access to care, among other uses.
And I guess I'm not entirely sure how they determined that those racial categories that are on there are the ones that go on there. I assume it's from previous census data.
Yeah.
Mike, I'm not so concerned about the question, but when we do federal grants, the same thing, except then we have to fill it out
Yeah.
with the breakout. And we don't have to break up. I mean, if I have folks who claim to be Hispanic, they simply claim to be Hispanic. They don't go through all of the subcategories. It's really tough
Yeah, and
to figure it out.
if you talk like with Native Americans, they want to make sure that they get the correct Native American, but then their tribal affiliation down to the letter so that they get it recognized.
Yeah, what do you do about biracial people? How do you,
It's kind of,
a child who has one black parent and one white parent, how does that person count?
it would probably be who's filling out the form for them, what they
call themselves.
Yeah.
You can check more than one, and some communities are doing write-ins.
Our president could check more than one.
Yep, absolutely. And some communities are organizing to say, write in, Somali, so that people know that we're not just counted as blacks or African Americans, but this is, how many of us are living in this community. So it's a tricky question though. Okay, so now we're gonna do an activity, and it's gonna be, might sound a little crazy at first, but first I'm gonna count you off by 4s. So we'll start here, how about?
1,
3, 4.
3, 4,
1, 2.
Write down.
Write down number. 2, 3, 4.
Okay, awesome. So how about 4s over here, 3s over there, 1s over here, 2s over here. Just gather together around a table. Okay, so everybody's in their groups, yes? Thank you. So we're going to be passing out some sheets of paper and markers for you. And this is an art project, and it's high stakes competition. No, just kidding about that part. All right. Okay, everybody, so listen up for just a second. And it's a short amount of time. So what we're going to do right now is give you 10 minutes to quickly go around the circle, remind people of your name and your organization, and one either barrier to census participation you could see in your community, or a unique attribute or asset that your organization has to encourage people to participate. Okay, so that's step 1. And then step 2 is you're going to come up with a collective identity. And I know you're all from different organizations, so this is where we got to think about how our attributes help one another. You're going to come up with a nonprofit census superhero. Okay? And the way to think about it is, what are the superpowers your nonprofit will need based on both the individual communities you serve, so with migrant workers, what is going to be, if you could have any superpower, what would it be to help those folks be counted? I'm thinking specifically about the barriers your community will face, as well as special assets that your organization has. So if you're, an agency that has people coming in the door every day, okay, well then that's one way. You can have sample questionnaire forms for people to figure out. And it can be very abstract. We had one group doing this exercise, and their superhero had a diaper on because it forced people to give a crap. So, everything from that, gigantic walking census forms with clear information about everything. So, we'll be around. I'll be walking around. This is my crazy idea, so don't blame Mike for this part. To answer any questions, but if you want to get started, going a quick once around your circle, who you are, your organization, and a unique barrier or asset your organization brings to the census, and then start thinking about your wonderful artistic representation of your superhero. Time to come back to the big group. All right. Let's start with having the 4s. We're going to have everybody do a quick introduction of your superhero. Yay, number 4. Okay, everybody, listen up. Here we go.
Pretty basic. We were deciding on names, and I was thinking mono to mono.
Oh, nice.
Helping hand, or handman instead of handyman. But anyway, we have a lot of outreach capabilities in our group. That's kind of our collective thing. Okay. So like reaching out, it's a pretty basic symbol.
Nice.
I guess the wings and the wheels represent our various capacities to reach out.
Awesome.
Good deal.
How about you guys right here? Twos, right? We're really shy about sharing this. Okay, this is all.
These productions
I think
will be
it's
available
beautiful.
on the line.
Bill here, Bill's enthusiasm will let our group. This is brought to you by the letter C. C is for census, and we have our countess. Nice. She's friendly and outgoing. She's always on time. And Andrew?
The magic wand.
Oh, she has a magic wand. And she always communicates and combats misconception. Perfect.
Great.
Those are great ones. There you go, guys. Back here.
So we realize as well that we have far-reaching network, also like a web. Spider-Man was kind of our influence to reach especially migrant workers that a few of us work with. And so these are wings flying around Montana carrying census forms, looking out for those people that might be hiding in some unknown places. So, and all connected together doing it. So.
That's great. All right.
All right.
These crazy people over here.
Our group
These are
of-
the geeks.
I
Way
think
too much
introduce
fun.
To Census. And reach everybody. Basically, our group works with a lot of rural communities and communities that are often held back from because of borders and such. So we're reaching everybody.
What's the last one on there? Arr. That's a pirate. It's a pirate pool. Way to go, guys. Everybody. Good job.
And just so you know, there is a lot, speaking of there's some pirate booty to be had from your census office. Seriously, they have so much stuff. Nice. Beach balls, you're gonna get some beach balls, other things like that. All right, so briefly, we've talked about this little why nonprofits and the census. We have access to hard to count communities. Simple as that. And we're huge. We have 14 million staff, 61 million volunteers, 100 million people served and engaged every year by our organizations. So we're kind of everywhere. We have trust. We're the trusted messengers to our community members. And cultural competency. Often when folks are interacting with us, we understand what language they speak, we understand their community that they are from, and what sort of specific challenges they may have that someone just knocking on their door may not. So how does this benefit us as a nonprofit sector? Well, we've talked about everyone not counted leaves money on the table. Us being fully represented means more power for nonprofits. When elected officials know there's a certain number of our community members in an area, you bet they're going to pay more attention to the issues that affect the people that we serve. It's playing a role in reinventing, this is our opportunity for the next 10 years to say this is what our nation looks like. And too often nonprofits in their communities are left out of that picture. And we want thoughtful planning of community infrastructures. Those are things that as nonprofits we rely on quite a bit. And we're all busting our butts to raise money all the time, right? So if this is $1,000 per person per year, something close to that, we wouldn't just leave that on the table if we knew that that could benefit our community members. So one of the things we say is, would you just leave this money sitting on the table? So what can nonprofits do? I think this next slide is for Mike. And you have someone awesome right here. You can get his card and learn about partnering with the census, which, P.S., all you have to do is fill out a form. And you can be eligible for all the different benefits. One thing I'll just mention is in-kind materials. So if you decide, hey, I want to print 30 t-shirts for this event, you can apply for the census to pay for those with your nonprofit's logo on it, and they won't give you cash, but they will pay the vendor for whatever it is you want to help promote the census in your community. But Mike's going to talk more about that.
In every folder, there's my business card. If you want to partner with the Census Bureau, please send me an email. I've got tons of information, and I will not spam you, I promise. I've got information on how you can apply to be what we call the Partner Support Program. Montana should get some funding for that because the only one that has applied so far is the state, and they got, I think you can get up to like $2,995, $2,995. You don't get the cash. You pick out things you want that say like Census 2010 on it, maybe your logo on it. The other thing about being a partner, everybody should have received one of these little window stickers. This is worth like $25 in value added to the Census Bureau. If you put that in your window at work, when people walk through your door, they look and they go, wow, Census 2010. So it's very important for us, if you display things or you hand out stuff to your members, or just put a flyer on your wall or on your bulletin board just for your employees to see. That helps us. But if you spread the word through your website, that's partnering with the Census Bureau. It doesn't have to be a formal partnership where you sign. It doesn't cost you anything. You can send me an email and say, Mike, I want to be a partner with the Census Bureau, and here's my card or my business, and I will put you on my email list. I've got every city and town in Montana that has email in my database. It took me like 8 hours of typing it in. Every county and every chamber that wants to be a partner. And I send them emails about every 10 days, 2 weeks with some information. First of all, I'll send you an email that tells you where to go on our website to download stuff. There's logos and stuff like that. Yes?
Do you have, if people would like to put this on their website or in their newsletter, do you have little kind of ready-made stories or?
You bet. We've got inserts. We've got inserts. Go ahead.
And we do as well, and we'll be talking about that a little bit. The Montana Nonprofit Association will as well. So specifically for nonprofits and for Montana.
And there's also, if you need something, let's say you need something really different designed, and you've got an idea, you send it to me. We've got graphics people that works in our regional office in Denver. Be more than help. If you don't have people that can do it, we can try. And I've seen some of the stuff she's produced, and that's really pretty neat. The other thing that we need help with is questionnaire assistance centers and be counted sites. We're looking for places where for a few weeks during the heat of the census, like March to mid-April, that somebody could come from the Census Bureau. There would be a census employee, maybe work like, from 5 to 9 or from 3 to 6 or something like that, so we can direct them, somebody there if they need help with a question, or if somebody didn't receive a form, they can get a form. If you're interested in that, please email me. I would be more than happy to send you the forms. And what else?
As nonprofit advocates, we want very much for nonprofits to be these questionnaire assistance centers and be counted sites for that very reason, that you have the people coming in your doors that are often not being counted.
Complete, we already talked a little bit.
We'll get to complete count.
Oh, okay. Is that coming up? Okay.
It's coming up.
Okay.
So we'll provide you at both the Nonprofits Count campaign and the census can provide you with info to put on your website, in your newsletters, sample email blast articles, when deadlines are, websites to go to, when big hirings are happening, so you can let people know, hey, apply for these jobs. Basic info now, and then things will ramp up later in the fall as we move into 2010. Basic stuff for your office. Train your staff to answer questions. You can have sample census forms. You have to be a Be Counted site or a questionnaire assistance center to actually have people filling them out there. But you can certainly have sample forms and answer questions. Like Mike said, just basic signage, that kind of thing. Distributing the awesome promotional materials that he has that he can give to you. Hosting community events. We're trying to make this a celebratory environment. I'm going to hand it over to Mike in just a second. He already covered this. Promoting jobs. This is the website to go to find out about jobs, and the hiring, peak hiring's just about to come up.
Complete count. What I've done in the beginning of the census campaign was to go around and talk to mayors and county commissioners across the state about forming complete count committees. And like I said earlier, the state has formed a statewide complete count committee that has about 100 members, with the lieutenant governor being the chair of that committee. If you live in Bozeman, the city of Bozeman jumped on board. They passed a resolution and are going to do some complete count committee. Cascade County, they're on board. Billings, Yellowstone County went together. They've had one formed for almost a year now. They're really ramping it up now as we're getting closer. Butte, Silverbow, they said they would. They haven't yet, after many emails. Missoula County, same thing. Havre, Lewistown, Glendive have all said they would do it, but they haven't really jumped on the bandwagon. It doesn't cost anything. That's the big thing. It's just a little bit of time. Maybe having somebody on the staff or a community member to head it up. And if you live in one of those communities where they don't have somebody and you want to volunteer to do it, we offer the training. I can give an hour of training to complete count committees. I went to Kalispell and did Kalispell, the city, Columbia Falls, Whitefish, and Flathead County officials in 45 minutes. And they all got beach balls. So,
yes.
So.
And M&A may be helping to form a nonprofit complete count committee specifically to address nonprofit issues. All right, so we talked about this. Briefly, before we let you go without going over, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the Nonprofits Count campaign. Every one of you is going to get one of our toolkits. We can get these to you for your organization upon request. Basically, one of the things that we do and our website does, it's nonprofitscount.org, is tries to take, and we have state-specific information for all 50 states, take the info from the census website that is relevant to nonprofits and make it easy to access. So we have a partnership form to partner with the census. You can fill out sample questionnaire, and then all these fact sheets, both in English and Spanish. And there's also a CD in here, and we can get as many of these to you as you want. This is basically just all the fact sheets on CD form. And we have widgets that you can put on your website so that people can just click right to the Nonprofits Count page. And M&A is going to be our hub for Nonprofits Count here, so you'll be able to contact them for anything that you need. Maps of hard-to-count populations. Here's a picture of what our website looks like. You can download all kinds of toolkits and information on nonprofits in the census with info on all 50 states. Downloads of all of our materials, the fact sheets. Here are the maps of hard-to-count populations, which we're hoping to get to Brian and folks for you all in Montana. Is we've been overlaying hard-to-count areas in the states with where nonprofits are located. And that's been a really interesting experiment, just because we've realized, wow, nonprofits are heavily located, heavily concentrated in the hardest-to-count communities almost universally across the country. So what we use these for is often, it's a selling point for nonprofits to do this kind of work, but it also helps you understand where the hard-to-count communities are. So, like I said, these website widgets and web badges that you can just throw on your website, anybody who comes can click on it. We're going to be providing translated materials that the census won't be providing if that's something you need. And please sign up for our newsletter. We have great webinars once a month with experts from the Census Bureau and from nonprofits talking about it, our nonprofitscount.org. All you have to do is sign up. Whoops. And then here's both my contact info and Mike's contact info.
That is really Jackie M. Brown is me, so,
I've realized
thanks.
that's a lot with the Census Bureau. There's a lot of people where their email is a different first name.
Mike, is this you?
I read that on your card, I was like, oh, Jackie.
So Mike, or Jackie, any closing thoughts? And then any questions from you guys? And I'm going to hand these out.
I really appreciate the opportunity. I met with Brian earlier. He urged me to come and talk, and I'll be at the Bridget's booth for the rest of the afternoon and in the morning. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to come by. And you've got my card. Email me, call me. I'm usually traveling Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And then I'm home on Mondays and Fridays to do paperwork, so.
Yeah, that's how I do my travels.
So, thank you.
Well,
Thank you, guys.
Bridget, it's a token of appreciation from the Montana Nonprofit Association.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks, everybody.
Who needs a beach ball?